Hello and welcome to Wednesday Debate Live with Zaid here on Nile TV International. Tonight we'll be talking more about from vision to action. And we will be wrapping up the achievements that has happened in Egypt. And the Upper Egypt Week definitely was an implemented vision in itself, from a strategy to the mega development projects on the ground. Before there were lack of services and of progress for decades that has been there in Upper Egypt. However, we have moved to upgrading the level of infrastructure, water, as well as energy supplies, building the underground sewage systems and networking, and also improving the roads. All this has been a dream, actually, for Upper Egypt, coming and being translated into action this week. From poverty and illiteracy and drug dealings to the dominance of state power today, where we can see discipline actually happening, from the far-fetched dream to the everyday reality. That's the difference between Upper Egypt in the past and Upper Egypt today. Well, this week does not only mark the dramatic change in the present of Upper Egypt that we witnessed with the mega development projects inaugurated by the president during a whole week that has witnessed very important achievements on solid grounds and on more than one level, with the mega development projects. Definitely they're also on top of the list. However, the last 7 years had witnessed lots and lots of developments on all levels. Not only about the new buildings or the new agreements or the progress that has happened, but the features. We're drawing actually the features of a new republic that we are really all proud of today. Well, talking about Upper Egypt from vision to implementation to reality, we have all the honor and pleasure of having with us Professor Dr. Mohamed Naguib Abu Zaid, Professor of Construction Engineering at the AUC. Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Professor. And together we'll be reading that important headline highlighting Upper Egypt and all the achievements there. The projects, Professor Mohamed, that has been inaugurated actually came timely, and as if we are wrapping the whole year with a sense of optimism for the future for this very dear part of Egypt.
Indeed, it's a very dear part in Egypt, and that represents the majority of the Egyptian territory. Two-thirds of Egypt falls within the Upper Egypt, so we're not talking about a small area. And as you nicely articulated it, it comes to inaugurate and actually wrap up a whole effort of several years, and towards the end of the year and in a whole week. So it's no longer sporadic efforts here and there, or you inaugurate a project and you inaugurate another one after 2 or 3 months. It's a whole thing that's integrating with one another, and that's why I like the title Vision into Implementation. And that's actually what creates the trust of the public, that they see things happening and they don't see it. I counted the governorate, at least 8 governors, at least 8, had major inauguration of important projects throughout the country. So definitely it's a very important sign of optimism. And again, as was stated by the president, he said 1 step of 1,000 steps to be followed. Like the vision and the implementation is not stopping here. We have a long way to go along those lines.
Yes, definitely it is, and it's a step forward. We're always happy to see this sense of vision translated into action, because this is the quality of life for all Egyptians that we aspire for tomorrow, while we are building a new republic. What was also one of the national projects that has been also giving a sense of optimism in the field of providing clean energy was the Binban Solar Park. This is a project, when completed, is considered to be the largest of the clean energy fields, not only in Egypt, but also in the region. So definitely it is going to be reflecting positively and also on other projects.
Yes, definitely a positive project. And many of the viewers, actually many of the Egyptians, do not know that perhaps the world's first solar power plant on a smaller scale was done in Maadi almost 100 years ago. Many people don't know that. Of course, so that tells you how pioneering we were in Egypt, or we are in Egypt. Yet this was not followed over the years, and that's where this project comes. You're talking about one of the largest, if not the largest, solar energy project in Egypt. And you heard, and the viewers and the Egyptian people heard the blessings and the praise of the effort of that sector, in particular, in contributing to the development of Egypt. Electricity and energy is the backbone of everything. Mm-hmm. So you're not talking only about Egypt, you're talking about Africa. You're talking about integrating and exporting that energy to other countries. Egypt is one of the countries, actually the whole north of Africa is very fertile land for more than any other place in the world, for solar energy, clean energy, and let's not forget that the solar energy in itself is the source of all other energies, whether it's fossil like petrol, like gas, like coal. They are all come originally from the sun. So we're talking about a very large plant, and add to that the ones of wind, the other ones of water energy, desalination projects integrated with one another. And that's why it's quite positive, and I believe Europe in particular will benefit from a project like that.
Yes, great that we see our country becoming a hub, as you have wisely mentioned, concerning also a link to Africa. And as he was inspecting the Bemban Solar Power Park in Aswan, President AlSissi said that he aims to place Egypt on the level of the developed countries in the generation of electric power and also in renewable energy. And this is very important because the president always thinks and aims high for the country. And we can see this actually translated into action on more than one level.
Well, I'm sure we will discuss different things, you know, different aspects of this project. But you and me and the viewers, remember, I wouldn't talk about 10, 20 years ago, talk about 5, 6 years ago, maybe a little more than 7 years ago, the power outage, the suffering, particularly in the summer. Yeah. And see the leap forward, the big progress that happened in that sector. And when we talk about that, it's not just the comfort of the citizens, it's not just the projects, let's talk about investment. Who is going to invest in a country that does not have a stable power supply? Who would put millions or billions of dollars when you don't have steady, reliable power supply? Let's also pinpoint about the power of solar energy, that you have Egypt on the north coast of Africa, and in many years Egypt has always been placed as one top candidate for the clean energy throughout this part of the world. Wind, as I mentioned, water, solar energy. So the world, as I said, and that's no exaggeration, is looking at Egypt in this regard. Let's drive to Hurghada or this area, see the wind energy, and people are capitalizing on that in a very good way. So it's a promising field that Egypt is glad that has tapped into it.
Definitely it is, and we find that it definitely increases also Egypt's weight in the region, connecting with its neighbors, whether in the eastern or the central part of Africa, as we have mentioned. And since we have with us a professor of construction in the first place, I'd love to ask you more concerning the leap forward that the country has been witnessing in the field of upgrading infrastructure, and especially also the bridges and construction and the road upgrade. This has been actually a scene that we would say we as Egyptians and the whole world really feel hats off.
Well, let me say something about the upgrade and infrastructure. But I would like to remember something and remind myself with it, is that I was a member in the parliament for like 7-8 years. Our colleagues who are representing the Upper Egypt government, and were always speaking to the government at the time, saying, give us more attention to Upper Egypt. We are left behind. Of course, I don't want to call it jealousy, but it's just a comparison. What's happening in the Delta, in Alexandria, in Greater Cairo area, compared to 7, 8, 9 governorates in the Upper Egypt, where they felt, and perhaps rightly so, that they were a little bit left behind in these developments. And on top of that comes infrastructure. Why infrastructure? Infrastructure has been, I don't want to say not in a good shape, but definitely, well, let's criticize ourselves. Upper Egypt, and I'm glad in your introduction you talked about clean water, about sanitation,
Yes.
Roads. Heaven forbid, and we don't want that to be repeated again, the road driving your car to Upper Egypt 10, 15 years ago was something like a very risky task.
Yeah.
Now we have roads crossing the Nile, even in very important areas. You wouldn't have bridges, and you use ferries to go from one side to another. It's like the 17th or 18th century. So this has been developed in a mega way. More importantly, I would like to say they are linked together. Like the Upper Egypt is going all the way to Aswan and further down, but have been linked particularly to the east to very fertile and very promising and active area for tourism.
Yeah.
Marsa Alam, Al Khusair, Hurghada, and the gate to Sinai and the tunnels of Sinai and so on. So when you look at these projects, you don't look at them at one particular angle, but you look at them as a whole. One last thing I want to say on that particular thing, I have never been to, and my students who have traveled with me can witness that as well. We have never been to an international conference in the past 10 years, and I'm talking here about Canada, the US, and mighty strong countries, without having infrastructure as perhaps on the forefront and as the top interest of all the people and investors in these conferences.
Yes, and that's why keeping pace with the whole world, we've put this also as a top priority. Back to your comment, Professor, when you talked about how Egypt today is becoming a hub and a linkage also, and exporting today also electricity is considered to be another milestone that the President, we have seen him commending efforts of Minister Sheker in that respect.
Exporting energy, and I'm glad we're talking about this, exporting energy, it's also in the sense that there are, our winter is longer than the winter in Europe, for example. Definitely, the number of light hours and the intensity of the sun and the perpendicularity of the sun on the solar cells, people who are working in this area will definitely explain that in more details, or can explain that in more detail. Egypt is, from a technical point of view, is poised to be a top country in terms of solar energy. I would like to add something to that, is that not only we want to produce the energy, we want to manufacture these cells, because it will not be that much of a gain if you are going to import everything and try to generate energy from the sun. And and we do have breakdowns, we need maintenance and so on, so we are manufacturing and on the road of manufacturing. So it creates some sense of independence in generating this energy. And that's an important part of the solar energy, let's say, endeavor that Egypt is taking.
Yes.
One of these, I think the number exceeds 1,200 megawatts. The number, these are numbers are unheard of. You recall the President saying each one of these is more than a high dam power.
Yeah.
So you can talk
Huge.
about very large magnitude as well.
Yes, definitely. Well, we're still talking about Egypt's vision that has been translated into action, and Upper Egypt sharing in this sense of optimism and the features of the new republic. This has been a sense of success and success vibes that we have felt throughout the past whole week. We're still covering this important headline and the beautiful recap of the whole year of achievements of 2021. And we'll be back shortly. Stay tuned. We're still covering this important headline and more concerning Upper Egypt achievements, and with us is Professor Dr. Mohamed Naguib Abu Zaid. Professor Abu Zaid, talking about the construction of smart cities, and many would ask, and I guess that you have many friends all over the world, are also questioning the fact why Egypt is establishing smart cities. Of course, keeping pace with the whole world, but those are considered to be also important features of the new republic.
This is a topic I would love to talk about it for as much time as we have, but I'll try to be brief. Smart cities are smart in almost every aspect. Smart in the way we build them, smart in the way we use them and move inside them. Smart in the way they operate and they generate waste and they recycle what they have and they don't intrude that much on non-renewable resources. But the angle that many people actually don't shed enough light on is that smart cities are better living cities, cleaner air, more greenery, less accidents, heaven forbid, more sensors and systems that would prevent any mishaps as such. So it's an investment that should render its outcome in less than 5 to 10 years if they were done properly. And like any other project of that nature, you don't do one and wait what's happening. No, you start with a bunch of them for that to be economically feasible. We talk about 7, 8, 10 of them. I don't want to give examples by other neighboring countries or in the Gulf area who are trying to take similar steps and so on. But what I want to say is Egypt is in a little bit advantageous position because we are starting completely new in that. And it's not just one area. You will do it in Upper Egypt different than in Delta, different in Sinai, different in what you're doing in actually the new administrative capital. The new administrative capital is implementing that in a good way. Let's also add to that the educational part. We educate our new generations how to live better, how to have a healthier life. All of that integrates into the global Egyptian vision for the year 2030, as you also alluded to in your nice introduction.
Yes, since we're talking about preserving the natural resources and everything is starting with an idea, and I guess that at a very smart project with your students, you managed to transform the masks as well as the gloves into concrete. And this, in fact, is something out of the box. Tell me more about how the idea had started, since we're talking smart. So this is also a smart project. And also it's a continuation of the importance of education and the students while they are working hands-on in order to serve their community.
The idea came through a discussion between me and my students while they were preparing for their graduation project. And I remember vividly, I was sitting, actually relaxing on the beach, and I received an email or some kind of communication. They were preparing ahead of time for that project, but it was born as a result of the contemporary pressing issue of COVID-19 and the fact that, and I hope this will not be the case, that you see a mask and gloves thrown here and there, which represent a threat, which if nothing else, it represents a discomfort. To everyone, and who wants to work or live or move in a discomfortable environment. So that's how it started. Any new idea has to be followed up by some kind of good planning, and I don't want to give ourselves too much credit, but definitely we had like 15 weeks to come up with this, with some sizable project, and to their credit, they had to collect them, to shred them, and more importantly is not only to use them in concrete or in building material, let's not to be too technical, but the fact that they created like a safe environment for the burial of these unhealthy or hazardous waste, so they don't contaminate the environment once more. Imagine you put it inside the concrete and whatever bacteria, virus.
And it started working? I mean, it entered into buildings?
That's a good point. We went into, it goes into 3 stages. One is laboratory tests, which we've done. Second phase, which we're in now, is to do a larger pilot project. But again, without giving ourselves too much credit, but it grabbed so much of attention. And I have to be honest about why I say that. It looks like the world, as you use the word, the new norm. The world is not going to go back to its, I mean, we're going to be living with masks and gloves. I hope not, I wish not, for some time. And you hear about, and in your top stories, you're talking about Omicron and this mutation of virus and so on. So it's going to be there for some time. And health protection and minimization and combating these viruses or alike is going to be with us for some time. So I always like to say to my students, let's not only look at the trees, but let's look at the forest. Are we going to be continuing with that for some time? And the answer is yes. And therefore, we have to find some kind of mechanism to do that. And again, once you have a good idea and people start working on it, then they are driven by the ideas, but also by the enthusiasm. And both together create something nice.
Definitely, and something nice also was happening, those vibes at Upper Egypt, and the humane touches during the visit by the president. We've seen the sense of hospitality, we've seen the warmth, and we've seen the simplicity. Upper Egypt has been longing for this sense of belonging, let me say, to the homeland for a long time. And the youth there wanted also to be part of the decision making and to be hands-on and to be listened to. And this is happening today.
This is happening today, I would say, big time. I'll go back like 3 years ago. 3 years ago, yes, when the youth conference was held in Aswan. So although it was a mega week for the Upper Egypt, but the youth summit or week or conference was held in Aswan. Aswan was proposed as the cultural capital of the whole entire continent of Africa. Areas like in Nuba that were rarely visited by an Egyptian high official like the president were celebrated, and they have celebrated the presence of the president and the government, and they voiced their wishes, their concerns, their hopes as well.
Yeah.
And I would like to pay tribute to that particular one, because we want people also to enjoy. Look at the scene, look at the children singing, look at the people are, hope is not something small. When you have a good hope and there are achievement, this blend makes really progress a possibility, and what's impossible becomes really possible.
What's impossible becomes really possible actually with the Decent Life initiative. This is a very important presidential initiative that is actually working on translating what is impossible to becoming possible, and to seeing not only in the rural areas but also our brothers and sisters in Upper Egypt and having their face of life actually transformed. So this is a very noble initiative, and it needs all of us, you know, working together hand in hand.
The beauty of Haya Karima, or decent life, is definitely the fact that it goes to areas and zones that were untouched or untackled before. And again, if you look at the title and reflect on what's happening, you are trying to give people decent life. Hygiene, cleanliness, a good cup of water, some sanitation, which is still an issue in Egypt that has been tackled very aggressively in the last 3-4 years in particular. Finding jobs. Of course, if you talk to anybody all over the world, they will tell you about unemployment is our number one or on the top of our list as concerns. It happens there as well. And you have the people in Upper Egypt, or in even throughout the entire country, looking for jobs, while you can and you should create these jobs nearby them.
Yeah.
Why should we have immigration from Upper Egypt or from the Delta to Cairo to look for jobs? Are we unable to create these jobs nearby them? And that's where the genius of this kind of initiative is.
Yeah. Look,
yes.
Professor, at this beautiful scene with the president while he's visiting Aswan and
Yes.
inaugurating new Aswan city. It's a beautiful scene, and it reminds me definitely also of what you were saying concerning the beauty of the achievement itself, and how things are like very much spontaneous here. You can feel the warmth, you can feel the humane touch, and also the very warm welcome. Maybe those kids haven't seen a president in their lives. So it has been such a remarkable scene, actually, during the visit, a wonderful
Yes.
scene to talk about.
Yes. I want to say a side note that could be of interest to the viewers. Nuba, or the land of Nuba, yes, the meaning of that word is the land of gold.
Yeah.
Most of the gold of Egypt was in that part of Egypt. And the simple people we see here, really, and something I witnessed myself, and members in my family witnessed that as well. If you go to their homes, they are very simple homes, but they are spotless clean. They try to dress in a clean way. They try to speak in a nice and decent way. They have this dignity that if you try to help, they would not do it unless they do something in return. So yes, it's a touching kind of moment, and you see the young people sitting or surrounding a president or the president for the first time that we see this thing, and they're singing in their language.
In their language, yes.
And by the way, until quite recently, these languages were spoken but not written. So.
Beautiful, and as Professor Mohamed said, that the land of gold and the hearts of gold too. Let's watch. Professor, how would you address the character and the identity, let me say, of New Aswan as a city, with its features, with its lovely people, the people of gold that we were talking about, and their beauty, and also a reflection. New Aswan has its own branding and its own character.
Yes, New Aswan has a new branding and new character. New character that's stemming from the old heritage of one of the most amazing and charming cities anywhere, which is Aswan, of course, definitely. Again, I will say you're trying to build a city, not too big, healthy environment, capitalizes on the nearby or the vicinity of a lot of heritage, a lot of monuments, a lot of spots that are nearby. Again, you mentioned Nubia, you're talking about up north, Luxor, and east, Red Sea. So it comes as one of the cities that provide this kind of model. And to do that, there is also the cultural element. The cultural element in Aswan is one of the things, as I mentioned minutes ago, that the president, the whole Africa is perhaps hoping that Aswan will become that kind of cultural center. And definitely when you go to an old city anywhere in the world, not only in Egypt, there is that much you can do. I go back to infrastructure, I go back, old city, old houses. You are going to evacuate everyone in the city to build a new city, or it's better to start fresh in a nearby city where it will stem its power from the old city.
Yes, and definitely it is. The new republic, as envisioned by the president, has no room actually for slums, as Egypt is embarking on establishing, as we all know, the new urban communities, and this is integrated into Egypt's Vision 2030. We are constructing more than 20 new cities, and I say so with a sense of pride, and this in fact is eliminating any sort of unsafe areas.
I'll take what you just said, unsafe areas. Slums are not only unpleasant areas, they are unpleasant areas. Unsafe for the people who live there, and let's not forget 10 years or more, the very tragic accident happened in one of the informal settlements where a large rock from the Muqattam mountain fell and killed a large number of people. Living unsafe, and when they want to expand, they cut into the rocks collapse, cause this kind of thing. It's a tragic thing, but it's something, it's a very strong build that's ringing there. So we want to eradicate them. That was and still one of the most challenging files that you have. So it's unsafe for people who live there, but it's also unsafe for the community. When you have people live in that kind of density,
unhealthy environment.
Unhealthy. I'm sorry to say, and I'm not talking about Egypt, I'm talking about anywhere in the world, so Egypt included as well, you have a fertile environment for crime, for illnesses, for social instability. Who would want that?
Yeah.
In the break, or in this talk of the Minister of Finance talking about and the President himself during that visit, before and after also, talking about increase in population. This area has very large increase in population.
Look
Yes.
at the beautiful industries here. The traditional industries in New Aswan was also a captivating scene. They made really products that reflect this sense of their special character and special identity. And also it reflects how the country today is encouraging them to do so, to start startups and small and medium-sized enterprises and new projects also.
Such a lovely point you're raising here, because imagine yourself a tourist going to Aswan. Are you going there to buy a brand suit or a brand shoes that exist in any other country? No, you want to buy something authentic, something that represents the area, whether it's a hat, whether it's an Egyptian dress, whether it's the spices and the nice kind of plants that grow there. So we need to encourage that, because if we don't do that, these kind of professions will fade away. And that's part of our heritage that we actually want to maintain and actually nourish.
Yes, we did not discuss and delve more into education today, but however, education is definitely there among the priorities of the state and the 2030 vision, and not only education, but education and sports intermingled. And today I will be honored to have with me one of Egypt's champions as well, Dr. Abu Zaid himself, and he has actually broke the Egyptian record before. Those are considered to be very special moments in his life. If I'm going to ask you about those special moments, Doctor, and also a piece of advice for the students who are watching us, to the youth today, while we are approaching a World Youth Forum, and how sports is actually very important. What you ever always said is that the competition is not between you and others, but between you
Definitely.
and yourself.
In the first
So
place, yes.
you challenge yourself,
Exactly.
right?
God knows, when you just mentioned now education, I was just thinking at that same second of education, because what's happening in Upper Egypt and the new universities that are taking place there and their branches is another testimony for how would you have this kind of integrated society without having good education, not only in the level of university, but all the way down. My advice to everyone, to my students, to myself, is that sports is something that goes deep into our bodies, but into our soul, into our minds. We have to maintain them. And we don't have, thank you for your nice compliment and introduction about me, you don't have to break a record to do sports. You don't have to compete to be a star. The simple walking, speaking about the president, biking and jogging whenever there is a chance.
Yeah.
And when you grow a little older like myself, it's not just to stay healthy, and we hope everybody stays healthy because it's a very essential part, but it's also your means to get rid of work stresses, to try to divert your attention from, and our life, no matter how good we are, no matter how good we try, there is always that element of stress. So you try to take that away. An early morning walk or jog, or an evening walk with family or with friends and so on, is always something we encourage. And since you talked about my students, and I have always had the chance to talk to them about that, when you're extremely busy and you don't have any time, that's the best time to do sport, because it will make you work better. The other time, it will give you a new spirit.
And relieves the stress.
Definitely. And will take your mind away from all the unhealthy thoughts and practices that anyone can have, particularly at a young age.
Yes, physical ability and working on the skills. We are working also on, definitely in Egypt today, on vocational training and on improving the students' skills. And this is very important, how to work on the strong points in the students and unleash their potential.
It's a lovely point that I would like to talk about it, at least briefly. Everybody in the university today, you know, they got the fortune or the luck or the privilege to have a university seat. But there is a huge sector of the society, and I'm talking about the world, that needs to be very well trained as vocational trainee or apprentices. That's what makes Germany the strongest economy in Europe. The US, most of you, one of the dilemma that we have in Egypt is that when you try to get a good plumber, for example, you don't know how to get it and how to find one. So, and the Ministry of Education has become the Ministry of Education and Technical or vocational training as another testimony for the importance of that file and importance as a priority for the nation as a whole.
Definitely. We talked tonight about Egypt's Vision 2030 and the achievements in Upper Egypt, and all this wouldn't have happened without the people who really believe in their leadership and in their better future to come. I thank you so much, Professor Dr. Mohamed Naguib Abu Zaid, Professor of Construction Engineering at AUC, for coming to our Wednesday Debate Live tonight. Thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you.
And I thank you, dear viewers, for joining us. I'm Zaid, and many thanks for watching.